Hey family, I'm Ed Leak and I am back, and I'm so excited to be bringing you part two of a message we started last week where we focused on asking the question, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And so I'm excited to kind of get back into it. Pastor Kurt said, bro, it sounds like you got a little bit more in it. There's a lot in there that we need to chew on. So I'm just being obedient. My brother Pastor Kurt said, bring it forth. So I'm going to bring it forth. So and part of that may be because we've just came off of a 21-day fasting and prayer focus. So we've been fasting and praying for the last 21 days, and we've been gathering every morning at 6:30 a.m. for prayer, and we've been praying over certain topics, certain areas of a focus. This week we talked about mental health, we talked about the pandemic, we talked about unity, young adults, we prayed for our church, we prayed for the finances of our people, and we prayed for disciples and discipleship. So we've just been praying, and we've been gathering, starting each day. And even though our 21 days of fasting and prayer are coming to a close, first watch, here I come. But we don't want you to lose what God has started in you. Don't let these worship habits go to the wayside, right? Continue starting your day with God. Continue praying and reading His Word every day. This connection that you've developed over these past 21 days, don't let it fade. Don't let it fade. And guess what? If you weren't really into the 21 days of prayer and fasting, it's okay. It's okay. You can start today. You can start today communing with God. And part of that is starting with us. So we're glad to see you this morning as part of our worship service. So let's kind of recap. Last week we talked about Daniel and the three Hebrew boys, right? So we were in Daniel chapter 1. And again, our theme was, who do you want to be? And in Daniel chapter 1, we see how Jerusalem was overtaken by Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar came in, he wrecked shop, he took over, and then he captured some of the young boys, some of the young studs who he was trying to convert over to him. And so they were in training, right? So if they wanted to survive, they had to learn his language, they had to learn his culture, they had to eat his food, they had to drink his wine. They had to do all the things that Nebuchadnezzar wanted them to do if they wanted to prosper in his eyes. And so that led us to our first message point. Our first message point last week was every action we take is a vote for the person that we want to become. Every action we take is a vote for the person we want to become. And I'm not claiming that. I will give all credit to where it's due. And I actually heard that phrase from a book, Atomic Habits, by author James Clear. And he talked about habit forming and how our habits should be formed based on our identity and not strictly on goals. And so we kind of talked through that and talk through deciding the type of person that we want to be. So you need to decide the type of person that you want to be. So if you say you want to be a healthier person, you have to ask yourself, what would a healthy person do in this situation? What would a healthy person eat in this situation? Would a healthy person skip going to the gym right now? If you decided that you wanted to be a good leader, a better leader at work, would a good leader put somebody or call somebody out in front of everybody else? Or would a good leader kind of take them aside and do some more constructive performance management? If you want to be a good parent or a good spouse, what does that look like? Decide the person that you want to be, and then start identifying behaviors and actions that you can do to be that type of person. Because ultimately, we want you to be who God called you to be. And so that's what we wanted to do. And so that's what we talked about last week. So our second message point had to do with faith, and we talked about the power of our faith being stronger and greater than the power of our flesh, So, Daniel and his friends, they lost everything, right? Their home was destroyed. Their family was likely either in captivity or killed. He was displaced. They were taken back to Babylon. He could have easily justified saying, you know what? All right, I tried this God thing. I tried it. Didn't work. I need to just kind of do something new. Because God allowed the calamity, right? He allowed this to happen, so he could have very well taken that position. And we know the enemy is sly, right? He kind of appeals to our appetites and our flesh to kind of convert us to his way. But he's still your enemy. Nebuchadnezzar was still their enemy. He had just taken over their land and destroyed their people. So he was the enemy. So everything that looks good and tastes good and feels good is not always good for you. And Daniel recognized that, and Daniel chose not to compromise. He chose to continue in his faith. He stayed true to his identity. He chose faith over flesh. And so that was our second message point last week. And then the third one, we need to believe who God said we are. We need to believe who God says we are. We are his children. We are his called. We are his masterpieces. Let me say that again. We are his children. We are his called. We are his masterpieces. And we looked at some scriptures in the Bible that kind of reinforce that, reinforce the fact that you were created with purpose. You were created with intent. You are awesome. You are worthy. You are God's child. You are God's called. You are God's masterpiece. Just kind of bask in that. Just bathe in that. Wow, I'm God's child, bro. I'm his son. You know, I'm his called. He has a calling for me. He has a specific intent and purpose for me. And I am his masterpiece. I'm his masterpiece, you know. So we're all a part of God's master plan. Wherever you are right now, you're in God's master plan, which makes you a masterpiece in his plan. So our behavior should change, right? Knowing that we're his children, that we're his called, we're his masterpieces, you know, that should impact our behavior. That should change the way we approach things, change the way we do things. Because God doesn't see us through our flaws. He doesn't see us through our mistakes. He sees us as his children. He sees us as his called, and he sees us as his masterpiece. So that's where we landed last week. And today I just want to kind of dig a little deeper into that faith piece, because a question came up last week after the message, and I thought it was a good question. It's like, where did they get that from? You know, Daniel and these three Hebrew boys. Everybody else, they didn't speak of any other dudes that kind of stood ground and stood firm on their identity. Everybody else kind of went along with Nebuchadnezzar's program. But these dudes, man, they were built different, you know. So what is it about them that gave them that faith? And the Bible doesn't say this explicitly, but this is all throughout the Bible, where we see that God has a history of great performances, right? You know, those of you who are sports fans, you have different arguments about who's the greatest of all time. You know, in this sport, who's the greatest quarterback of all time? Who's the greatest basketball player of all time? Who's the greatest leader of all time? We all have the greatest. God is the greatest, right? And God he's performed over and over and over again and proven how great he is. And so Daniel and the three Hebrew boys, they recognize that. They acknowledge that. They didn't forget all the things that God has done. They didn't forget the history of their people and all the things that God had delivered their people from. They didn't forget about some of the things that maybe they've been through in their life and how God delivered them through those situations and through those calamities. So the challenge to you is think about some of the things that God has brought you through. I mean, sometimes we're sitting here and we're in the moment, but if you look back on your life, and you probably don't have to look back that far, you know, to see how much God has brought us through. I know for me, God has brought me through so much. I should be dead and gone, you know, probably a few times with some of the decisions and choices that I made, but God saw fit to preserve me and to keep me. So we need to reflect on those things. And I think that's one of the things that they did. They trusted and they believed in God's ability to preserve them. And they acted on that belief. They trusted and believed. Trust and believe, right? They had faith. And a lot of times we say, well, where did they get that faith from? I don't understand. And if think about it, we operate on faith every day. Every day. Let me give you some examples. Driving on the road, 60, sometimes a little faster, miles an hour on a two-way street. 1-ton, 2-ton vehicle, truck, SUV, whatever you drive. And the only thing that's keeping you from the car that's coming in the opposite direction is 2 yellow lines. That's it. You have faith that car coming in the opposite direction is going to stay on their side and you're going to stay on your side. You got faith and you're operating. You drive every day based off of faith. The other day, my daughter, she was home for winter break from college. We took her back to school, me and my wife, you know. She has a fourth floor dorm room. I ain't walking up no steps. Press the button for the elevator. Did I check the certificate of the elevator? Did I check the maintenance logs to make sure that elevator was good? Nope. Press the button, got in, went up. Airplane. A lot of times we get on the airplane, right? Do we go into the cockpit and ask the pilot for their resume and how many flight hours did they train and what's the maintenance record? What's their accident record? What's the maintenance record on the actual plane itself? No, we just get in and we fly. We go to a restaurant. Do we check the seat to make sure that it's solid? No, we just plop down and eat food that they bring to us that we didn't even see them cook. We operate on faith all the time, right? And it seems like we trust people, we trust society, we trust systems. But then when it comes to us trusting God, all of a sudden we get a little sketchy. I don't know about that. I think God is a lot more trustworthy. So let's get back to Daniel. Let's get back to Daniel and his friends and let's dig a little deeper. So we talked about chapter 1 last week. Chapter 2, I'm not going to read chapter 2 because we don't have the time, but you should read it for yourself. This Nebuchadnezzar dude, he is off the hook. And the Bible is real, bro. It's real. And you don't have to believe me. Nebuchadnezzar is a historical figure. So you don't have to just trust the Bible, but the Bible speaks for itself. But if you go to chapter 2, he went on to the next thing. He had a dream and he was disturbed by the dream and he wanted somebody to interpret the dream. But not only did he want them to interpret the dream, he wouldn't even tell them what the dream was. And if somebody came and they tried to tell him what his dream was and what it meant, and they were wrong, he was going to kill them. He was going to kill them. But guess what? Daniel did it because he didn't do it on his own strength. He did it through the help of his God. God proved himself again. He proved himself again. So now we're in chapter 3. Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. Let's read it. King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. So the king, he's flexing. He builds a statue of gold 90 feet tall, 9 feet wide. And then let's jump down to verse 7. So at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people, whatever their race or nation or language, bowed to the ground and worship the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. All right, got this statue. Every time you hear the music, stop what you're doing, bow down. All right. So what do you think happened, right? What do you think happened with Daniel? What do you think happened with, the 3 Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego? What do you think they did? Do you think they bowed down when they heard the music? I don't think so. So let's read on. Verse 12, but there are some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. Here we go. We got somebody snitching. They pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods and do not worship the gold statue you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true that you refuse to serve my gods and you refuse to worship the gold statue that I have set up? Listen, I'm going to give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. And then what God will be able to rescue you from my power?" So here we go again. Nebuchadnezzar is flexing. You got to bow down. You got to bow down to my statue. You got to bow down to my will. You got to bow down to me. Because I don't believe in your God. I believe in mine. So once again, they had a choice, right? They had to choose who they were going to serve. And it's not an easy choice. It's not an easy choice. I don't know if any of you ever been near a fire before, because the punishment for disobeying Nebuchadnezzar was getting thrown into a fiery furnace. And he was so angry that he was just off the hook. I don't know if any of you have ever been burned before, but it's not a good feel. I remember when I was a little kid, about 12 years old, making some hot dogs and French fries. I had some oil on the pan, getting it ready for them fries. And so, Mom always told me, don't oil and water don't mix. But I'm hungry. I'd get those fries out the freezer and I throw them into the pan and it splashes. And That Joan got on my arm, that oil, that hot oil. You talk about a praise dance, this arm was on fire, bubbling up and everything. It doesn't feel good. Burning doesn't feel good. Let me tell you another story, a little bit more serious. When I was much younger, we lived in a duplex apartment. It was a four family apartment. Two families, 2 floors on each side, and so we were in a second floor apartment. Middle of the night, Dad wakes us up screaming, "Get up! We got to get out of here! We got to get out of here! Got to get out of here! Got to get out of here!" And then he went bathroom and he wet some towels and he wrapped those wet towels around us, me, my brother, my sister, my mom. And we had to go out because it was only second floor. We didn't have a fire escape. So we had to go out the front door to get to the stairs. And when we opened up that front door, there was a fire in the apartment across the hall from us. And those flames were just jumping out. And we had to just get down the hall. We just had to get down the steps. But that heat was hot. I was probably only 4 or 5 years old, but I remember it distinctly. Like how much heat was coming from those flames. And we went outside and sat in that old Chrysler New Yorker. Yeah, I remember those Chrysler New Yorkers. And we kind of sat there and watched the house until the fire people came and tried to put it out. But I just remember how hot that fire was. And so sometimes when we read these accounts in the Bible, we forget that these are real people dealing with real things. And they had a real choice to make. They had to choose whether or not they were going to get thrown into that fire or whether they were going to stand on their beliefs and choose God. What do you think they did? Verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty." I added that little twang in there. I don't know if they said it like that, but that's how I'm feeling it. "But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up." But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear who we serve. Can we pause there for a minute? Even if he doesn't. I don't know, man. That's the kind of faith I want. I want that even if he doesn't faith. Many of us, and myself included, I'm not going, the preacher's preaching to himself. Sometimes our love is conditional, right? We'll love God, we'll serve God, but it's on some conditions. And if we're real, that's real, right? Sometimes we have a medical diagnosis, right? That's not very good. Will we still serve him even if he doesn't take that affliction away? Sometimes we might get ourselves into a really, really bad financial situation. Will we still serve him if he doesn't come up with a wad of money and bail us out the way we want to be bailed out? Let's say we have a wayward child, or maybe a relationship, whether it's a marriage relationship or some other relationship that just kind of goes downhill, goes left. Will we still serve him if restoration doesn't happen the way we want it to happen? Or if restoration doesn't happen when we want it to happen? Like I said, I'm right there. I'm not judging. I've been right there, and I've sometimes put conditions on my love of God, not so much on my love, but my service of God or my loyalty to God. But God is showing us through these young men right here that there is a higher level of faith that we can have, a higher level of faith. When we talk about faith, very often we refer to Hebrews. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. It says in the New Living Translation, "Faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see." Faith shows a reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see. The New King James Version, I like this one too. It says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Listen, we're not always going to see, or we're not always going to understand the totality of what God is doing. but we still need to trust him. We trust in people, we trust in systems, we trust in all this other stuff. We need to trust in God. We're not always going to see his master plan fully. We're not always going to understand why he's allowing certain things to happen, but we still need to trust God. We still need to trust him. We still need to trust him. Let's go to another scripture in 2 Corinthians, or as some would say, 2 Corinthians, chapter 12, starting with verse 7. It says, even though I have received, and this is the Apostle Paul talking, even though I have received such wonderful revelations from God, so to keep me from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from being proud. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. And each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weakness and in the insults and the hardships and the persecutions and the troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. For when he is weak, that's when he's strong. If we read the rest of Daniel chapter 3, we're going to see that God preserved those 3 Hebrew boys. He delivered them from that fire. He delivered them in a very dramatic and a very miraculous fashion. He delivered them in such a way that even King Nebuchadnezzar had to bow down to them because of the power of their God, the power of our God. But we also see with Paul, for whatever reason, he had this thorn in his flesh. He had this affliction. He had this thing that was kind of tormenting him. And he asked God to take it away, and God didn't take it away. But guess what? Paul didn't put conditions on his love for God. He didn't put conditions on his service. He still chose to serve God. And he said, you know what? Even in my weakness, that's when I'm strong. When I'm weak, that's when God's strength can shine. When I'm weak, that's when God's strength has to hold me up. When I'm weak, that's when God's strength has to get me through. Listen, God is able to shine the brightest when we are at our weakest. God is able to shine the brightest when we are at our weakest. But I want to encourage you today. That there is victory on the other side of the fire. There is victory on the other side of the fire. Yes, you may feel weak sometimes. You may feel like you can't figure it out, that you don't have the resources or the wherewithal to get through what you got to get through. Guess what? Neither did Daniel in chapter 1, but he said, you know what? Y'all took over my land. Y'all took over my people. You took me in captivity. I'm still going to live my way. And I guarantee you, I'm going to look better and feel better at the end of these 10 days than everybody else. And guess what? God did it. God did it. Daniel couldn't interpret that dream. He couldn't tell somebody else's dream. I can't tell you what you're thinking. I don't know what to do. I'm at the mercy of this king. But guess what? God did it. Chapter 3, these 3 Hebrew boys, they got thrown in the fire. They yoked them up and threw them in there. They were at their weakest. They had nothing they could do. But that's when God showed. That's when he showed up and he showed out. When they were at their weakest, that's when God shone the brightest. God wants to shine right now. You might be feeling weak. You might be feeling down. That's when God can shine. So we just need to move out of the way and let God do what God do. Okay? I know that's not good grammar, but it's real. Let's just move out of the way and let God do what God does. Amen? I just want to encourage you today that there is victory on the other side of the fire. Don't melt. Don't wilt. Stand firm. You are God's child. You are God's called. And you are still God's masterpiece. God bless.
Wow. Was that not an awesome word? Man, bless God. Thank you, Pastor Ed. We really appreciate you. You're such a gift to all of us. Hey, we want to thank you for taking time to view the message and being part of our service today. We want to encourage you that you would not just hear the word today, but then apply it, live it out. And so if you got any questions or if you want to talk about your commitment or whatever, please visit our website at theengagedchurch.org. You're going to see there an Engage with Us section. And it's an opportunity for you to learn more about the church. It's an opportunity for you to make a decision for Christ. It's an opportunity for you to give, but it's an opportunity for you just to go a little further in your faith. And so we encourage you to please visit that. You can also always email us at info@theengagedchurch.org. We love to hear from you. Once again, we convene on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. via Zoom. But on February the 6th, the first Sunday in February, we're going to convene in person at the Regal Cinema. So we really invite you to be a part of that. We'll be there the first Sunday in February, the first Sunday in March, and the first Sunday in April. And then in April, we'll begin to meet every week. So we just encourage you to be a part of it because there's something beautiful that happens when we're also together, elbow to elbow. Well, actually socially distant. But God will be there to bless us and we'll enjoy our presence together. So one of the unique things that happens when you visit our service, either virtually or in person, is this small group time where we get a chance to hear the message and then kind of break into groups to talk about, man, what did God show me in this? What did I hear? And here's my question. And how would I live this out? And just so many rich things that happen when we convene together in these small groups. And as great as our small groups are, man, I know they'd be better if you were there in the room. And so we'd love to have you. So look forward to being with us. Once again, thank you for viewing the message. Thank you for being a part of our worship experience. And we look forward to engaging with you soon. God bless you. We love you, family. Be blessed.